Okay, you should all be able to hear me now. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everyone. My name is Anthony Marjanovic. I'm a solution architect with Veeam Software. Today, we're going to be talking about ransomware. We're going to go through a little bit of a simulation, and we're going to also go over best practices and what we should be looking for to beat obviously cyber attacks with backup, and where Veeam can help you with that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the questions section, and I'll answer them at the end of the actual webinar. And any chat, feel free to put that in the chat section as well. Let me just start the recording. We're already recording. Great. So everyone can see my screen. Let's go first. So what we're doing, so we're going through, I'm not going to explain what ransomware is to everyone, but I'm going to go through some common scenarios that we're seeing at Veeam. So learn from the trenches, learn from what I've seen in my customers, in what ransomware has done in their environments, and obviously hackers and also malware and infiltrators. Going to go through a little bit of how it works. We will do a live ransomware attack simulation, and we'll also do a recovery from the attack, and we'll also go through some other interesting functionality around prevention, so preventing ransomware by being able to scan your backups proactively. So we're going to go through a live ransomware and scanning your backups on a proactive schedule versus then a reactive schedule, and also go through some techniques for preparing for the worst. So techniques around Veeam, around your entire environment. We'll go through some key techniques there, and then we'll pass on some resources. So ransomware is a disaster. We know this. Being able to recover from ransomware is key. So obviously in Australia, we've had a lot of ransomware and data exfiltration, things popping up in the news with customers obviously being compromised. There have been times where it's taken 2 months to get back online and to get back to 100% operation. So ransomware is definitely a disaster that we need to recover from as quickly as possible. And a little bit of a scenario, I haven't thought about it in this way before, but I found this in some of our documentation. So bad guys have infinite attempts to get in, and they only need to get it right once. And good guys have one shot to obviously block attacks and must be right 100% of the time. So your odds are really against you, especially when there's things like paid ransomware as a service. Ransomware as a service has, you can have multiple attack vectors and obviously multiple accounts. So I'll go through a little bit of a story that we heard with some of our customer base next. But a little bit, I'm not going to boil the ocean, but a little bit of how ransomware attacks work. So there's obviously an infection stage. There's some sort of exploit that the attackers will use, as zero-day exploit or going through boot devices. There's obviously some way that they'll exploit the system and infect your environment. And they'll go through a series of scanning, and they'll obviously get a good map of the environment, work out where everything is. This is more, the ransomware is always the last bit of the attack. And before that, there's a whole lot of reconnaissance and detection of the environment. There's obviously staging all the ransomware into the environment and then going through that last encryption. And obviously now a lot of data exfiltration, so taking the data away and requesting a ransom after the fact with the data taken. So we saw that with Medibank and Optus in Australia. Now, why is ransomware so effective? So pretty obvious, but it's all people. When you include people, we're all not perfect. So there'll be times where we won't be 100% monitoring something, or we have to. Everyone has to sleep at one time. So there's obviously times where at night or where people, processes, and technology obviously don't 100% follow what we're supposed to. So there's poor password policies, or someone not following the password policies, people that aren't tech savvy. So obviously there's phishing types. So ransomware is effective because of people, processes, and technologies. Again, this is how did they work. So there's a whole list of steps that we went through before as well. But the main thing I wanted to show you on this slide is the average dwell time. So this is quite surprising as well. 200 days average dwell time in APAC. So in our region, it's quite long actually. In Europe, it's about 177, and in the Americas, 71 days. So this is probably comes down to, I guess in Australia and New Zealand, we're quite ahead of the curve. We're cloud first, typically in this region. Obviously, the rest of Asia a little bit behind, but and then EMEA and Americas, they're technically a couple of years behind us. So potentially older, more known technologies are harder to actually get into. So very surprising that ransomware dwells that long. And then going to ransomware as a disaster, this is the sort of total cost of ransomware. So recently I had a customer, and the hacker was actually asking for 50 million. So much higher than what is requested here. And this was a large organization, and luckily we were able to help them get their data back. So obviously they didn't have to pay any of that, but they were very close to paying. So there's always the risk of downtime, the brand damage, and also if you're going to pay the actual sum, it potentially it can be a high cost to pay if you're not prepared. And then ransomware as a service. So if you haven't heard of ransomware as a service, this is that customer that I mentioned. They actually there was a very advanced set of an organization and hackers who gain access to organizations, and then they sell that access. So they sell that access to criminals that aren't as intelligent, and what they do is they provide one set of passwords, and what they provide a single set of passwords. They gain access. The criminals obviously have the exploits and ask for payment, but my customer was actually able to lock them out initially of that account. But those non-intelligent criminals went back to the ransomware as a service affiliate, and they were able to provide another account to log in. So ransomware as a service, obviously paying a sum to be able to try and extort a customer. So this is probably a bigger risk because you've got now a lot more criminals that wouldn't be able to actually enable and get into someone's environment, but they're able to do that now through a third party. So this is probably somewhat the bigger risk now. And now we're going to get to some cool stuff. So we're going to get to a live simulation with Veeam and Veeam software. So yep, everyone can see my screen. I'm looking actually at the audience view. So I have a server here. And I have, this is just a Windows server. I've got a couple volumes. I have a NAS share here, and I have a ransomware test folder. And I've got a little document, time to encrypt, and we're saying help. We need help, so we don't get encrypted now. I've isolated this workload. It's not, this is a ransomware simulation software. So this is potentially what you can use in your environment to simulate ransomware without affecting your environment. It's called Infection Monkey. Now we go through and we configure what exploiters we'd like to use, put through passwords to actually test any IPs that we'd like to go through, and any particular networks that we'd like to go for, and then what do we want to encrypt. So we're going to encrypt that particular folder that I showed you, and we're just going to go back and run that now. So that's going to go ahead and run, and we're going to get infection map. This type of simulation can actually spread. So if I wasn't isolated, it could spread throughout my environment, and it will give you a map as well, and the security report of what was actually encrypted and what was exploited. But we're just going to do this on a single server here. So while that's happening, that takes a few minutes to go through its exploits and encrypt the data. we're going to actually, this backup here is the same server that we had. Now that ransomware is on there, that's the simulation, but it is technically detected as ransomware. And this could be the dormant ransomware. You saw 71 days in America's ransomware is typically dormant, or an attack is the attackers are actually trying to stay silent in your environment for 71 days up to 200 days in APAC. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to recover a disk, and we're going to scan for ransomware. So this is something, Veeam's had this integration for a while, but we're just going to go through what it will look like live to be able to recover a disk and be able to scan for ransomware upon recovery. And we're looking here, so I'm going to restore, I'm just going to change the SCSI location. So I'm going to restore this 10 gig drive. Now that was where that file was, that file, the share, that NAS share, and also where the ransomware is stored. It's stored in that drive. We're going to scan the restore disk for malware prior to performing the recovery, and it will be aborted. Recovery will be aborted if malware is found. So we're just going to go through, and we're going to run that scan. We'll check on our ransomware. Yep, so it's still running. You'll see it's starting to build out an infection map, but we've only got a single server in this environment. So we started it. So it's collecting information about my environment and starting to do its worst. And in the background here, you'll see this restore session is started. It's loading that drive here. So it's loading that volume. It will be loading that volume here. So I'll go back and we'll just monitor that. So it didn't load the volume because we detected malware, so we aborted that. So that's pretty quick, 20 seconds, we detected malware and we aborted that recovery. Now this allows you to detect malware upon restore, making sure you don't restore malware back into your environment. It can always be dormant for a long time. Any CLI enabled antivirus engine is able to be used. In this case, we used Windows Defender, and you can see we are able to pick up that malware quite quickly. Now, the benefit of using your own platform is it's a trusted security vendor that specializes in security recovery. So Veeam is allowing you to use best of breed security tool sets to scan and manage your backup data. So that's done. We didn't obviously fail that over. If we go, we didn't obviously do that. Now this encryption should almost be towards the end. It takes about 4 minutes. So this is what we started at 2:09. It's 2:12, so it should almost be finished. And next, once this is done, we're also going to go through a bit of automation and how to actually scan, how to scan your data with a script. So being able to, again, proactively scan your data. So the secure restore that I just completed, that was, so you'll see here, it failed, that instant disk recovery. This restore is reactive. So it's when I need to restore, am I going to check to make sure that my data's clean before putting it back into production? So this protects you from, after the fact, but how can we proactively help you be protected? So that's one of the next things I'm going to be doing. So yep, so infection monkey's done. We go security report, breached this server .10, and we encrypted this that file that I've got there. So if I go back to the file, we'll see this is that's now encrypted. Don't panic. I think I should panic. So it's not a real ransomware attack. This is a simulation. And we see my file can't be read. So it's encrypted. It can't be read. If I put it in here, it's encrypted. So that's encrypted. Now, what we're actually going to do now is we're going to recover that workload. So we're going to go back and we're going to recover back to the last known point in time. So this is the file server. So the last good known point in time was less than a day ago. We're going to give that a name, underscore restored. We're not going to scan for malware. We know there's malware there, but we know the last one was actually clean, and we're not going to connect the VM to network just in case we need further remediation. So we are going to power that back on. And if we open up vSphere, we should see Veeam start to actually create that standby and that restored virtual machine into my vCenter server shortly. We'll just see what we're doing, and we'll obviously show a recovery from that ransomware attack quite quickly. So publishing the backup files, we should see that actually coming in. Yep. So there's the virtual machine. So this will open up another VMware console to prove that that's restored clean. Just have a look. There we go. So that's been restored, and we're going to quickly. It should be powering on. Yeah, powering on virtual machine. My vSphere just must not be updated. Yep, powering on, and we're going to just open this console here, the web console. Log in, and when we log in, that folder should be back to what we expect. So back to time to encrypt. So back to unencrypted data. So that's obviously just a quick restore from a ransomware incident. Now, next, what I'm going to show is how do we proactively scan. So if we want to proactively scan for data, we've got something called the Data Integration API. The Data Integration API, and one moment, I will we'll have to work it. I'm putting my credentials in. So, but the Data Integration API is able to be called via PowerShell, and the Data Integration API presents any of your your virtual machines and your disks as iSCSI targets on a Windows server. You can also do Fuse protocol on Linux. So it will present any of that as iSCSI. And now when that data is presented as iSCSI on a server, you're able to then scan it with your tool of choice. So we're going to go through and we're going to restore a point in time. So we can see we're looking at a backup. We're looking for a certain job called Secure Restore and Data Integration API. The next line, once this loads, you'll see, so instant recovery, we're automatically recovering this workload into Veeam. So that's happening now. And we're going to publish this content. So publishing it means we're just going to mount it as a disk. Which point in time? So I said get the latest backup. So get the Veeam restore point from backup, the backup name being this job. I want you to get file server. Oh yeah, I didn't mean to click that again. I want you to get the file server, and I want you to get the last restore point, so the latest backup that we've got. And then I said I want you to publish this content, the point in time, which is $point, to localhost. Localhost is this server here. Target credentials creds. So the credentials I entered before. So that's mounted. So you can see we've mounted it here. So if I go to my C drive, Veeam file level recovery, pardon me, that will be on this one here. Yep. So now I've mounted that server. You can see I had that 200 gig volume and that 10 gig volume, and now that's mounted. So via that API call, the Data Integration API and the PowerShell call, I'm able to mount that drive. I'm able to view it, search it. Look, I can go through. If I've got NAS shares, obviously I can load that quite quickly. You can see how quick I'm clicking through. And now from here, utilizing the Data Integration API, I could also scan this volume for any malware. So you can automate that via your script. So you can automatically have. So we're going to open up Windows Security. You can automatically scan. Automatically have a scan ready to scan any volume that's mounted. So if you look here, you'll see that we've mounted the volumes within Windows. Now you can, with these volumes, I can actually change the letter, and I can add. So you can see that's just on C drive as a file level recovery, but I can add a letter. So if I add a letter, it's then going to come up as a volume, NAS share. on this completely different server, we're able to mount a data from a backup now via an automated API. And it's not just one at a time. You can mount as many as you like. Whatever your backup storage can handle, you can mount 50 virtual machines, 50 disks at once. Now, once these are mounted, the aim of this is to be able to scan and proactively remediate or scan and detect with your own trusted security software. So in this case, we're going to use Windows Defender. We're going to do a custom scan. So we're going to choose a custom scan now, and we're going to say, well, what am I scanning? So in this case, let's scan what we know. Well, that folder actually doesn't have anything. Let's just scan. Let's scan the entire volume. So we'll just scan F drive. So that should scan. And this was just now this part you would also automate. In my case, I'm just doing it manually, but you would also automate the scan part. And there you go. We've detected 2 tools that are there. What do we want to do with them? Now, these are read-only. Now, what do we want to do with them? So they're not able to spin up live. There's no compute there. Well, there is compute, but we're not going to obviously open them. But we've detected some malware. So again, being able to, in an automated fashion, via PowerShell and our data integration API, automatically scan and detect for malware in your backups, and doing this at scale. So being able to do it at scale very regularly is what we can provide as well. Okay, so that was, we'll go back to PowerPoint. Please feel free to put in questions or chat that you have, and we'll look at them as we go as well. And from obviously attacks and exploiters, backups are number one. So as part of the deployment, they target backups firstly, and they know all backup vendors, and they target backups to delete or compromise backups. So when you need to secure a backup, it's your last line of defense. And I see there's a lot of proactive and like a lot of proactive protection from client-based malware protection to AI-based malware protection to firewalling and a whole bunch of proactive protection. But when we're talking about secure backup, we don't normally focus on this as much, and that's where we need to start looking at protecting all backups and making them immutable. Providing detection and monitoring and alerting if there's any problems with your backups, any changes, and testing and verifying rapid recovery. So Veeam we can automate recoverability. So one thing that we can actually show you with that testing and verification for reliable recovery is, as part of Veeam, we have something called Sure Backup. I don't think I've got a copy here. No, I don't have a copy loaded it, but we have something called Sure Backup, and that can automatically test your backups on a weekly or daily basis, however frequently you'd like. And when we use Sure Backup, we can actually scan for malware. We can boot the environment, making sure that we've got a ping, we've got VMware tools, making sure the applications are up and available, making sure it's clean from ransomware, also making sure it's not corrupted data. So there's a whole bunch of tests we can do, and that Sure Backup means your team, your engineers and administrators don't have to manually do backup testing. When it's not manual, it means we're more likely to actually have a correct testing schedule. So there won't be any manual errors. It's automated and automatically verified for you. So it's to be able to ensure that we can reliably recover the data. A few things on Veeam as well is we are fully software only and storage agnostic, meaning if you're hit by ransomware and you're out, but you still need to recover from your backups. But let's say they took out all of your production data center that's on premises, and the only backups you still have left are in cloud or on tape. How long will it take you to get hardware from a different vendor, like an appliance vendor or a vendor that normally installs their software directly on hardware? Obviously throughout 2021 and 2022, there were 6 to 12 month delays on hardware. So being software only means we can deploy and have a Veeam server up and running in half an hour. Now, no other vendor can say that. We can have a Veeam server up and running in half an hour. We can connect it to cloud storage or wherever your backups are stored, and we can start recovery. So it's all about quick recovery. And that's why Veeam will always be software only and storage agnostic, to ensure as much flexibility for our customers as possible. They're allowed to choose the storage they need, and they're allowed to recover very easily and quickly because Veeam is software only. You don't have to wait for hardware to start obviously recoverability. Lower costs as well, so you don't need to scale compute and storage together. You scale what's required and needed for you. And backup is obviously your second tier of data. You've got your production data, you've got backup, and you've got another copy of backup. So typically, it doesn't make sense to have your backups clustered. So typically, if you're choosing a clustered backup target, where you've got 3 nodes, your production storage is already clustered. You've got your SAN that's clustered. All your hypervisor hosts are clustered. Typically, backup, because there's multiple copies of backup, it doesn't make sense to have clustered backup storage. You're overpaying for compute that you don't really need. So that's where Veeam allows single node for backup, create another copy on long-term retention, could be in the cloud or tape, or it could be a deduplication device or object storage anywhere else. And we allow you to scale for what you need. So, you've seen the whole industry's kind of moving away from hyperconverged infrastructure as well, and moving back to 3-tier because it's much more flexible and easier to scale. And future-proof. So Veeam, for flexibility, there's no lock-in. We offer a free community edition to manage all your recoveries. It includes support. So our free community edition includes next business day support. So if you ever decide to leave Veeam, there's no lock-in. You've always got access to your data, and we still have support if you need to conduct restores and have any issues. So now Veeam also provides you the ability to detect issues with with your data protection environment. To recover from ransomware, all your assets must be protected. So what we do is we have SLA tools inside our analytics software to make sure that you're meeting your SLA. So, are you protecting your workloads every night, and do you have a valid backup that is clean? So Veeam has reporting software that's automatically scheduled to be able to create the compliance documents and the reports to prove that your backups they've happened, they've been tested, and they're able to be recovered. So all of that reporting is there, and that they're clean. They're clean from malware. So we have the ability to ensure that they are clean from malware as well throughout our testing. So Veeam is able to do that with you, and we will alert as well if there are any issues. So Veeam has the ability to create immutable backups. Another thing that we do is if someone goes and changes the settings in your environment, or if there's a hacker and they've reduced the immutability period, we actually stop that. We stop that for local immutability. If someone alters some backup job, or they alter the retention, we will detect an alert on that, and we will alert the administrators if anything's changed. So that's if any infrastructure configuration changes have happened. Obviously, detecting ransomware is obviously big as well. So being able to possible ransomware detection. So we have the ability to monitor CPU and RAM and network to see if ransomware activity is occurring, and alert you on that. We're able to do that on our backup hardware as well. And we have suspicious incremental backup sizes. So if you've been encrypted, we'll be able to alert and say, well, these backups are now suspicious. We're backing up 100% change data. That doesn't look common. So we have a baseline that we create based on your last week of daily change rate, and we're able to alert you if there's suspicious incremental backups. And this is another thing. So prove you're ready for a disaster. So from ransomware or any other disaster, we also have something called a recovery orchestrator product that overlays Veeam to provide the documentation and compliance around disaster recovery. So this is if your organization needs a compliance document and a complete run book of what your DR looks like, and you can just provide it to auditors, we have the ability to provide that for you as well. The big difference about what Veeam provides is we don't just orchestrate the recovery, but we make sure your documentation is always up to date. So we automatically generate and update your documentation, and we actually test and validate that your DR works on a very frequent basis. So that's for providing compliant DR to prove to auditors your disaster recovery strategy and your business continuity has been tested. And then another bit of flexibility about Veeam is data mobility. So if your entire local data center is no longer available, Veeam is able to move data around wherever you need. So if your local data center, if they've taken out network firewalls and all of your production infrastructure, and you can't wait 6 weeks or 8 weeks for new hardware, Veeam is able to recover your data to Azure, AWS, GCP. We're able to recover that data because we have independent backup files. So Veeam's backup files are independent. There's no catalog that we rely on, which means even if let's say if you can see my. Thanks for staying on during that. Thanks for being patient. So Veeam has independent backups. We're able to completely build a brand new Veeam server in under 30 minutes and start recovering data from our backup repositories that are immutable. Now, again, reliable recovery. So Veeam, we've been around for 14 years. We've built our own explorers that allow us to, like a Windows Explorer window, granularly capture data that we need. And we've just released a new Explorer now. And we're able to granularly restore data. We don't need to restore an entire server. We can just restore a single database. That's all we need, a single database or a single file. We don't need to restore the entire workload. And again, so back to Veeam trusted immutability. We have immutability across all of our various data types. We're verifying that your backups are able to be restored. And we're making sure when we talk to customers, we make sure that they're following 32110 rule. So 3 copies of your data on 2 different media types, 1 that's offsite, 1 that's immutable, and 0 errors. So making sure 0 errors are there. And we specialize in backup and recovery, so we're going to be able to recover your data as quickly as possible. Now, recovery, detecting that data, we enable you to detect any ransomware errors because we expose that data via the API to any other third-party software. But when it comes to recovery, that's where Veeam shines. We're able to recover at scale. We're able to orchestrate recovery from backup as well. We're able to assist you to get your data back as quickly as possible. Now, when it comes to immutability, we've just added multiple immutability targets. So we've just added Microsoft Azure immutability in Azure Hot and Cool and also Azure Archive Storage. We've also added local immutability on Amazon S3, also on any S3 compatible object storage. The reason we've added local immutability is Veeam can now write directly to object storage. So we can provide, if you purchase local object storage or use MinIO, or even if you have a NAS, so you can see I've got the little lock on the NAS here. If you have a Synology or a QNAP that has the ability to provide the S3 protocol, Veeam can also make those backups immutable. So we're providing you many different options. On the low cost end, you can use a NAS. In really cost-effective, fast storage, you can use a hardened repository with a server. And in the higher end, where you would like an appliance, we can use S3 compatible object storage, and that we can make immutable immediately. So immutability start to finish with Veeam, you can see here on the screen. Then in version 12 as well, we've really expanded on security enhancements. So we're providing group managed service account support on Windows. So we never have to have your service account in our actual database permanently. So groups and managed service accounts, we retrieve a new database on every application aware backup. Fully supporting Kerberos, not NTLM, so more secure network transmission that's fully encrypted and can't be sniffed. Multi-factor for the Veeam console. So that's also there. So that's something that we've just provided as well. And we're also on the console, we're providing auto log off also, and we can manage Linux without SSH and sudo. So that means now when you go through and you have to update Veeam on Linux, there's no need to provide a root account again. We can just use our default admin account that's on that server. Almost finished. And so in the end, 4 ways to thwart hackers. So lock down server access, make sure that only the people that need to have access to the server do. Keep root to yourself, obviously. Have as much visibility on your environment as possible. Utilize Veeam One with all our monitoring. We monitor immutability settings, making sure your immutability is always meeting the SLA. Segregate duties, so make sure that no domain admin accounts can access your backup infrastructure. You're supposed to really have a separate forest for domain workloads. So if I show you, I have a slide for that you can see here. If you are going to actually have your Veeam server on a domain, make sure it's a completely separate forest and it's one-way trust. So have your Veeam server, your backup server in a separate work group or on a separate forest that has one-way trust. That way, if your domain is compromised, your Veeam server is also not compromised. And then follow the 3-2-1-1-0 rule, so which we just went through before, having 3 copies of your data on 2 different media types, 1 off-site, 1 immutable, and 0 errors. So make sure you're using automatic backup testing with Veeam to automatically detect ransomware and also any errors in your backups. What's next? So Veeam, we can identify and recommend based on Veeam best practices. So you can schedule a call with your local systems engineer. We can obviously have a chat with you and help you on any ransomware best practices protection. We can obviously talk about any remediation that we can do. We can talk about version 12 and our updates that we've provided, making sure you implement them. We also have a best practices analyzer in our version 12 software. So our version 12 release, that best practices analyzer will make sure you have RDP turned off. It makes sure you have immutable backups. It makes sure you're using encryption. So please, when you're ready to upgrade to V12, when your organization is ready, depending on your change window and how you implement new versions, and if you're doing N-1 or N-2, version 12 has a lot of security enhancements in the product as well. But please reach out to your local partner, your local Veeam team, and we'll be able to schedule a health check. So we do have a tool that we can run across your environment, and this tool is for our existing customers. So it's normally a paid engagement, but for our existing customers, we're able to run a health check on your environment. So please reach out to your team. And then Veeam On is coming. So if anyone wants to register, you can register until the 28th for an early rate. Veeam On, there's a whole bunch of certifications that we run at Veeam On. There are customers that can go. You can be an active speaker. You can be a speaker at Veeam On. So if you do want to volunteer or you want to attend Veeam On in Miami, Florida, please reach out to your Veeam account manager as well. And there are some extra resources. So all of your best practices. We do have a security in our Veeam Architect site. This is our best practices site. We do have a security section where we actually go through all your best practices, what you should be implementing and how you should be implementing your environment. So please do connect with that at your earliest convenience to make sure you're meeting best practices. We've got communities where you can ask questions about cybersecurity. We do have a dedicated SWAT team as well in our support. So if you ever are hit with ransomware, Veeam does have a SWAT team dedicated to helping you recover as quickly as possible and remediate that. So that's a value add of having Veeam. And also, last of all, there's white papers to read. So obviously, secure backup is your last line of defense. So reading this white paper will go into much more detail than I could cover today, as I've just covered the high level. And lastly, thank you. So thanks for everyone. Thank you for attending. Veeam 12 is available. Veeam 12 is available, so please go out and download it. Make sure you read the upgrade checklist before you upgrade. But Veeam 12 is available. And there's one more question: is it better to have a health check before upgrading? Not really. Just make sure you read the health check before you upgrade. Sorry, make sure you read the upgrade checklist before updating. So that upgrade checklist is on in our user guide, and it just goes through what's supported, what's not supported, what you should check for before you upgrade to version 12. But that's released, so yeah, go and upgrade if you need any of that functionality. I believe this is recorded as well. Yes, my voice dropped. Apologies there. I've got some questions coming through, but yes, this is recorded, so it should be able to be shared out to the attendees as well. Thank you very much for attending, and hope to see you again on future Veeam webinars.